Go ahead. have Jeff on any minute now. And as soon as he gives me the go-ahead, we will get started. Ugh.
What is up, buddy?
Good afternoon, sir. How do you do?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Excited.
Me too, man. I just played a Terran. One base all in, brought all his SCVs. I won, and he said, "Way to abuse sentries," and then left the game. Can't think of a better start to my day, actually.
That's fantastic.
Warm Terran tears.
I was coaching on the European server yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy wanted to work on ZvT. I didn't have any European friends that could come play with us, so I went into the Terran strategy chat room on Battle.net.
That's a mistake.
And I said, does anybody want to come practice ZvT around Diamond Master level? And this one guy comes and volunteers. And my student's like gold. And the dude just rolls all over my poor student. And after the game, I'm like, hey, we play one more? And he just goes, no. Says nothing else beyond that, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I was really hoping that you'd play one more so I could kind of show him how I want that build to go. And he goes, okay, fine. So then he comes on, and I play out my build, and we get into kind of like a later mid-game where I'm on 3 bases, he's on 2 bases, and he's pushed across the map, and he's sieged up at the bottom of my 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
And my macro was pretty on point, and I go and I attack with a maxed army, and I just roll through everything he has. And he goes, fuck you, douchebag, you think you're so cool in front of all your friends, and quits the game. So.
Well, that's what you were actually doing, is you went onto the European server and trolled the Battle.net channels asking for any volunteers that you could brag about.
Yes, so I could look cool
beating random Terrans.
Friends. So, at least he's on to me. Somebody's figured it out.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Anyways, Jeff, we're talking about well, you know, I started off the week saying we're going to talk about cheesing as a Zerg player. And we started everything off with Katz yesterday. And after talking to Katz and really getting inside his head, you know, I feel like I had sold the guy short because he's not a gimmicky one-trick pony type of player. He's really good. And
he's got like 6 tricks, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he understands the game quite well. And at least far more so than I had ever given him credit for. And so I've kind of renamed the theme to just non-standard play. What I'm kind of hoping to pick your brain on tonight is how can I approach ZvP, because of course you have a much more perspective as a Protoss player and on what works against you. So how should I be approaching my ZvPs if I want to mix it up, get a little cheesy, be a little more aggressive than maybe normal? What do you think is a good way for me to approach that question from, if that's a sentence?
Okay, so ZvP, right?
Yes.
Really, there's not a whole lot here that I feel like the Zerg can do to be cheesy, quote-unquote, but non-standard. There are a few variations we can think about. So one of them, which is just, I don't even know if we can call this non-standard because I think this is a thing of the future, but
right.
It is difficult, and it is something that not enough people are doing, is like baneling drops on the army.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly very effective. Some of the stuff that Katz might have talked about, but certainly he implements in his gameplay, is like expanding to the high yield.
Yeah. In
a lot of situations. If the guy pylon blocks you and you want to hatch first, oftentimes on like Metalopolis, he'll just be like, fine, just go over the high yield and expand there.
Mm-hmm.
And actually from ramp to high yield, it's actually not that much further. Of course, there is an element of risk there. you are slightly closer to their expansion. You are you have multiple ramps up into the same base, so it's not like you can create kind of a focal point of defense. But of course, the advantage is the increased income from the high yields. You have to saturate ASAP. But I would say probably the most common one, and this is something everyone does across the board as Zerg players, is like hatch tech, roach ling kind of super aggression off a 2 base. And I think that as long as it's hidden, like completely hidden, it can have some benefits. And again, there's that risk element because it has to come up against a Protoss that's expanding.
Right.
If they're sitting on their one, that's kind of a silly if because 99% of Protoss are expanding, right? There's not a whole lot that are content with sitting on their 1 base, unless they're 4-gating, in which case that game is different anyways.
Yeah.
But one thing I did run on the Korean ladder that's kind of cool on Scrap Station, I'm not sure how effective this would be these days, but it was a super fast burrow movement rush. So the guy would actually, I think it was like, he might skip ling speed, go lair, get burrow movement, burrow, and burrow roach speed off of like 1.5 hatcheries, and then he'd come after me with it.
Yeah.
And it was actually so fast that my cannon wasn't even down for my normal standard build, so it was kind of silly that way. But again, it's gimmicky in the sense that if I scout, if I have that mid-game probe out there, or I just throw another probe out there and I see slow lings, no Protoss is like, well, that's weird, he must have forgot. You know, they're obviously like, oh my god, what's going on?
Alright. Okay, I think that'll be a good jumping off point. That gives us some things to kind of work into our play in the next hour and a half or so. I want to kind of come back and talk about expanding to the high yield, because that's something we talked about with cats yesterday, and it really brought back, a light bulb went off in my head, and it reminded me of you talking to me about being aggressive passively.
Yep.
In that, you know, by overexpanding, it forces the Protoss to come attack us, and certainly by expanding to the gold, it's saying you better come do something fast, or else we're going to punish you for it. I guess, I mean, you just said yep, more or less confirming my thought, but can you elaborate on that thought process a little bit? I'm going to force you to do something by expanding?
Yeah, you know, in this game, there's multiple forms of aggression, and one of the ones I really stress on my Zerg students, and you in particular, is aggressively expanding, because I